Caleb Calhoun here with former Vol and former Pittsburgh Steeler. Played 11 years starting in the NFL, Ramon Foster. Ramon, thanks for doing this. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Also, West Tennessee representative.
That's
together,
true.
you know.
Memphis,
Ripley, absolutely. We got to bring that up.
Yes, that's true. The best part of Tennessee. I joke with people on our live feed all the time that the best recruiting for high school in Tennessee is West Tennessee by far. It's not even close.
You know what I call it?
What do you call it?
Best Tennessee, not West Tennessee.
See? Love that. Love that.
Even though I'm a Middle Tennessee resident now, and I love Knoxville too, I, of course, got to go where home is and just say best Tennessee. You get it though, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot I want to touch on now that we have you here, but first, I actually am going to come out of left field for something real quick, which is that you were part of a draft class in 2009, probably the most overlooked draft class ever out of Tennessee, because you and Ramon Foster both became undrafted, longtime elite starters in the NFL. And there was an undrafted player from Tennessee this past year who played guard just like you did.
Who are you talking about?
And Jerome Carvin, and another West Tennessee kid, actually.
Yeah, you see the trend?
Yes. And I feel like he might be getting the same short stick that you guys got. What do you think?
Definitely. I think he was in the football world probably too familiar, I guess, but didn't know a whole lot about him. The new system that you had in Tennessee under Heupel, he played a lot, ended up just being the older guy in that group, just kind of took a back seat to a lot of stuff. And Trey Smith kind of went through that too, although he was a draft pick. Sometimes I feel like they make Tennessee linemen have to prove it a little bit more than others. But Darnell definitely kind of broke that trend for us, and I'm hoping that will end up being a pipeline. But I feel like this Jerome is going to be fine. I know he has the mentality. He has the work ethic, and his film is good too. Sometimes coaches don't know how to judge players by simply the measurables sometimes, and he wasn't a combine invite guy, so you have that knock against him. So now his tape is what's going to be his biggest advocate for him moving forward. And that's the thing about the NFL too. If you can, they will. And I think he's a guy that possibly can. And the best part for him is this: goes to a really good organization that knows how to evaluate talent. Them drafting Trey, I know it still went 6th round, but that speaks about him even going into camp and becoming a starter. It was never an item could Trey play or not Trey Smith. It's an item, health. And the fact that he was a day one starter for them was huge. And him also being able to mentor Jerome too while he's in Kansas City, I think it's going to be fascinating. I sent Trey Smith a text message last week to tell him keep crushing it. And of course, a guy like him, we Vols usually look out for one another too. Teaching the ropes. So I'm not really worried about Jerome not having a career. I'm actually looking forward to see what his path looks like.
Yeah, I agree. And it just seems like in general, and I do this covering recruiting and covering the NFL draft, why is interior offensive line, it seems like the hardest position to scout talent for?
Because they don't have many people that know how to look at it. I think fans hear offensive line anytime, it's usually negative. It's only for penalties. We don't get praise for doing actually good plays. We just simply do our job. And the fact that some scouts may have a blind out to what's a good block or a good play. Just because you give up pressure doesn't mean it's a bad play. The quarterback has the opportunity to get the ball off. You do those types of things. Or it may be the idea that a guy may fit a system better. So you got to be strategic on who you're picking and who you're going after. It's always a conversation of what's good and what's not. On the interior, tackles, we know they need to look like basketball players that are big dudes. We can fit them. Centers, usually a guy, if he's quick enough, strong enough, and he can play in the NFL. When it comes down to guards, and that's the reason you don't have many in the Hall of Fame either, the eyes of what's a good play versus a bad play, or what's a good guard versus a bad guard, I think it's a very thin line, and nobody knows how to judge it just yet.
Turning it to Tennessee a little bit with guard, it seems like guard is the most underrated part of Josh Heupel's offense, because even though he likes to go for the big plays, those big plays are nothing if he doesn't have that run game that he's doing every day, right?
100%. Spraggins, if I'm not mistaken, will be a high draft pick this year if he stays healthy and have another good season. He was on an early watch list this offseason of being a guy that can potentially be a first day, second day type of guy. So I'm excited for that. But you're right. The guards in this offense mean a lot. And I'm glad that they're starting to get some interior linemen as far as high caliber recruits coming in under Heupel right now. And him also, one of the first things he said, was the run game has to be a big part of my offense. Don't let the passing that we do affect what you think we don't do on the ground. So I'm excited to see what these young guards do. I think Jordan Addison is one, or Addison Nichols is one of those young guys that can come along. And of course, Mays up the middle, anchoring those dudes. The run game, but the interior three will be huge. So I'm hoping also for our sake, being a VFL, that Jerome actually does crack the 53-man roster this year, because it just, the more numbers and bodies you have at the upper level, the better it does for you in recruiting and for your college in general.
Yep, and talking about Heupel's system and guards, and then tackles and going to the line a little more broadly now.
Yeah.
You mentioned Darnell Wright. He flipped from left tackle to right tackle last year, which was one of the most brilliant moves Josh Heupel did.
Yeah, definitely.
But I seem to remember your senior year, an offensive coordinator who didn't handle rotating offensive linemen too well.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, I know.
So how do you strike that balance where you flip or don't flip offensive linemen?
Well, that system right there, I think Dave Clawson's the coach. He's at Wake Forest right now. I think I hate that we were a trial and error type of team for him and doing those types of things. One, we didn't have the personnel to do that, even though it was actually awesome for me on the next level to show I could play both sides for the success of our team. I don't think it was a good thing to do in those moments because we didn't have the personnel to flip right and left. It became predictable. We go out there early in the season. Heck, Florida's calling out the play is coming right here because our tendencies and how obvious it was and the stuff that we were doing throughout. I know now that he's gotten away somewhat from that system, but it can be a good thing for guys if you're capable and want to learn it. We had a group of older guys that were willing to learn it, although I will say I was a little resistant to it because to change sides, and it got to a point, well, this is just what we're going to do. But there's a saying in the NFL as far as, Darnell going from left to right is the more you can do. As a young guy, that is the phrase that you have to carry with you because the more you can do, the longer you stay around. What has to happen is you have to become an older guy that learns this too. The more you can do, the less you get paid because now money's involved in it. And if you're not a master of your craft at a certain point, then you're probably going to be out of the league, especially if you're a guy that moves from one position to the next year after year. So I'm hoping for Darnell, if he starts off on the right side, he sticks. Or if they decide to move him to the left side of the line, which he's that athletic. I think so many people have been talking about how athletic he is. Then that'll be great for him too, because we know like every other spot in football, the left tackle position is a prime spot.
Right. It's funny. That's the age-old reminds me of the LeBron MJ debate because LeBron can do more. Yeah. It's just what MJ was good at. He was amazing at.
Yes. Yeah. I'm Team Jordan, by the way, just so you know.
Totally understand. I respect both, but I do think Michael's better.
Too. Yeah, that's where I'm at with it. We can love both.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So thinking about that and transitioning it to this offense, there's, you talked about getting how it actually helped you somewhat for the NFL.
It did.
How do you balance, because the rules are a little different in college football. There's the blocking downfield that's allowed, which Josh Heupel takes full advantage of.
Yes.
How do you balance the X's and O's versus player development? Because I will say with David Cutcliffe, player development was amazing under him.
Yes, it was. It was big under Coach Cut. That 07 season that we had with him, we were like a well-oiled machine because of player development and how he challenged us and whatnot too. But the X's and O's, I say this for rookies. Let's go for Valus. Let's go for almost anybody that's in this. Jalen Hyde's in right now. As far as some of the young guys, right, offensively, in the X's and O's. Your rookie years is making a splash. Whatever you do well, do those things. If you want to send Jalen on go routes the entire practice or the entire season, do that well because you get an opportunity to establish yourself as a pro. Once you establish yourself, that's when you start to build your platform of, look, I'm multifaceted. I can do other things. If you're a running back that hits the edge and go 99 yards, do that first, okay? Because now we got a sticking point and we can branch off from there. And that's what I think one thing Heupel has kind of shown has talked about a lot in his offense. Look, you see us tricking defenses, but we're actually teaching these guys how to run routes, how to scheme up defenses, how to read the safeties, how to come back or go over the top of linebackers. I think that's very unique. And the longer he's at the University of Tennessee, the more I'm hoping the guys that go to the NFL under his tenure will actually show that at the next level too. Jalen Hyatt has a big task. He has to be able to show that the Tennessee offense develops wide receivers. Right, wrong, fair, unfair, that's just how it's got to be, because you are a representation of what Josh Heupel, the University of Tennessee offense, is for young guys that may want to come and say, Tennessee's going to make sure I go to the NFL.
Right. I mean, I'm sure that had to be a big thing for you because Philip Fulmer was known for developing offensive linemen.
That played a huge part in it. It really did. When I committed to the University of Tennessee, I knew they developed linemen. I knew I was going to have to work and prove myself to become a starter, but they develop offensive linemen. And me going into the NFL, even as an undrafted, my knowledge, my technique, and my understanding of how to play physical came from the University of Tennessee.
And is it important to? I heard Mike Kivin say this one time, where it's like when you talk about schemes and installing X's and O's, but he said, but you don't want players that are young. You prefer them play fast and physical than think too much. Is that more important?
100%. That's all you really want. What was told to me was this: as an undrafted guy, it's like, we know you can play, but if you show some fights, you will make it here on this football team. And you know what I did? Play fast, and I fought, literally and figuratively. Sometimes I had to get into some fights in camp just to prove myself, because it is young 22-year-olds and even younger now, some 20-year-olds going to the NFL with guys that's already got 8 years on you. So if you don't show you belong or that you're willing to fight for what you want out of it as a young guy, you're going to be washed out. A lot of people ask questions like, how didn't that guy make it? One, probably mentally just couldn't stomach, guys been better than him. That is a thing too. Or just physically not willing to fight. Like a lot of guys going to college, you know how recruiting goes. They'll give you your spot sometimes, or you're promised like, hey, look, halfway through the season, we're going to work you in. And NFL is not that. Either you do or you don't. And being young and fast and fighting and finishing plays a huge part in sticking around in NFL. But coaches are quick to say, what kept you around in year one won't keep you around in year two.
Right. So thinking about this year with Tennessee and talking about the SEC as a whole, do you think what do you think their chances are to beat Georgia in November this year?
In Neyland, I'd almost give it 50-50. We got to see how Georgia feels. No. But this is also coming from a guy in my era of playing from 04 to 08. We fared well against the Dogs.
I would never forget that 07 game y'all played Georgia where y'all just manhandled their defensive line.
Seriously, and I know they're a different Georgia now. And I've actually talked to some people around that organization that says Tennessee is the one team that we circled that we still hadn't figured. So when I hear that, when I talk to people that I know, and I have the understanding that, look, we can play well with Georgia. It's got to be clean. But I look at Georgia as a team that we can compete with. If we lose and it's only about 3 to 6 points, we're closer, and probably more close than what Kirby would actually want to feel the pressure of the Vols being that close. That offense, say what you want to, does confuse and put teams' defenses in a bad spot. And if you have a defense led by Tim Banks that can get off the field or create chaos and actually utilize those outside rushers, D tackles, and hopefully cornerbacks and safeties that you've got, and also actually having a middle linebacking core now, I don't see why not.
And what's intriguing about that game this year is, well, you played on the first team I remember that was in for Tennessee that was an important November game.
Yeah.
Because typically Tennessee is like, oh, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, let's sleep through it. But that year Kentucky was good.
Yep.
You'll have to play Darren McFadden in Arkansas.
Come on, man.
and actually a really dangerous Vanderbilt team that year. And what do you think how important do you think it is just for the school itself to finally be able to play these meaningful November games like Georgia?
But they're big. And also I say this too, you also get a different version of each teams. That's one thing we always kind of said about the Florida game too. It came early where when Florida was really, really trucking and good, then you really don't stand a chance. While we playing rivalry games or whatever you want to call the Tennessee-Florida game, rivalry, not rivalry, why are we playing them that early? But now you have the opportunity to really just let teams grow, let quarterbacks figure themselves out, and having Georgia that late, or Kentucky, they find another quarterback and offensive line to produce points and whatnot. It's exciting. It's almost like an NFL schedule. Like the SEC know what they're doing. They schedule these games to be good. I recently saw the LSU schedule. We were talking about them on our show. LSU has Texas A&M the last game of the season. That's not a throwaway. A&M embarrassed LSU, if I'm not mistaken, last year, because I think they had the opportunity to be in the college football playoffs. Like, they're strategic in setting this up, and that's why it just means more in the SEC.
That's true, and I am one of the people that has the hot take that LSU's winning the West this year again. I got them repeating. Yes.
Okay.
Our site thinks I'm an LSU homer just because I think I just think that there's a lot of talent in Louisiana.
It
They're
is
the only Power 5 school, and they probably have the best head coach they've had since Nick Saban.
So I was gonna say, and Brian Kelly can coach his butt off.
He can.
Period. Yes.
He absolutely can. Ramon, thanks so much for doing this.
No
really
doubt.
appreciate it. You have a great one. Enjoy the rest of your time at SEC Media Days.
We'll see what turns up. I know Alabama's coming through here, so we'll see what happens.
Nick Saban's very political speech. We're going to play very hard this year.
Rat poison and stuff like that. Yeah, 100%. But it's been fun. I'm enjoying it.
All right. Thanks a lot. With Ramon Foster, this has been Caleb Calhoun with Off the Hook Sports.